as we talk about more stuff, these are the people that are not only acting in these movies and shows and shit, but these are also the people that are being in charge of projects in the future. And they just don't understand the comic book realm. They don't understand it at all. American comic book culture, these characters, they are different people. I had a very insightful video segment that we did in an interview on our show where we talk with Chuck Dixon. And you can tell there's just a big difference between your average like Hollywood writer versus your comic book writer. The ones that are good, that is. A lot of these comic book writers nowadays have aspirations to be Hollywood or have their stories adapted in Hollywood, and you can tell. That's why a lot of them suck. But John F. Trent talked about this over there, and Michael B. Jordan talking about Killmonger. Let me just also say this. I don't know if I've said this before. Killmonger in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not Killmonger at all. I don't know who the fuck he is, but he ain't Killmonger. But he had some things to say about him being Killmonger being a villain. That was the person that he, I guess he was talking with Bleacher Report about the character that he portrayed. Rooks, who was the person that was interviewing him, said, after Black Panther came out, and I swear I did this debate for 3 months, obviously there's no definitive effort. Opinion is opinion, but is Killmonger a villain? Jordan says no. He's wrong. Even in how he's depicted in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he's a fucking villain, right? But if you don't know anything about a villain, you think that, oh, he was. Well, let's hear what it is that that he has to say. What's his explanation? He was a necessary part of the conversation. He cared about his people just as much as T'Challa. Did he really? He just had a different way of going about it. See, again, and let's see what else he said. He says he was a historian and studied history. Oh man, I mean, that's really Michael B. Jordan. That's really thought provoking there. And that I guess villains don't study history. Would a villain study history? And oppression. And Eric is a really smart guy. You know what I'm saying? MIT graduate. The guy is like very intelligent. I guess villains aren't very intelligent. Michael B. Jordan. And he saw that there was only really one way to change things, you know, so he went about that. No. And I don't think his argument was completely wrong. I don't think T'Challa's argument was completely wrong. I think it was a necessary conversation that needed to be had. No, it was just like kind of a conversation that you had amongst it's typical kind of the African black versus the African American. And it was just a story that you guys used the Black Panther universe to tell. And I'm not saying that the story was dog shit. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's just what happened. And this is why Killmonger isn't Killmonger at all. If you've read any of the books about and how he Killmonger is, you know that Killmonger in this story isn't Killmonger at all. It's just Michael B. Jordan playing a villain with hair. He says, he then began to argue that from Killmonger's point of view, but you know, it's a movie also. I'm willing to take life, you know what I'm saying, to do whatever it takes, you know, and this is what I've been taught. This is what I've shown. This is what I've seen shown that works. Okay, so you cannot like it, but there is other version of trying to get change done, and it's kind of taking a little too long. I ain't got time for that, you know. And yeah, I guess, but I'm doing it like this. It's like wanting of the same thing with different methods. It's like, you know, people always kind of do the whole Martin and Malcolm approach. They wanted the same thing. They just had different ways of using that. All right, now I take exception, and now I actually have a fucking big problem with what he just did. It's the classic thing that a lot of people like to use with X-Men because they don't know a goddamn thing about Malcolm X. I wish you guys would quit saying that. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were ideologically different. And obviously I prefer Malcolm's approach. Certainly two things when we talked about black dignity, even pre-Mecca, especially post-Mecca, but even pre-Mecca. They were this is why they were not buddies. This is why you will only see one picture of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. because they didn't fuck with each other. It wasn't that they were they wanted the same thing but went about different ways. No, they were fundamentally and ideologically different. Okay, they were fundamentally different. I did a video, and I talk about this. My video is titled what is it titled? Why I Don't Obsess Over Racism. And I show you a bunch of clips by way of Malcolm X. This isn't even a conversation that started with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. We saw this previously with W.E.B. Du Bois as well as Booker T. Washington. It was the same kind of ideological difference, right? It wasn't that they wanted the same thing, but where Michael B. Jordan, who's playing Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger, which is, again, he's not playing Killmonger. That's just him a name. He doesn't seem to understand how villains work and how they've historically worked. Almost every single one, the big ones, Lex Luthor's of the world, to the more small ones, have their own idea of how something should be done. Okay? Often, what makes them villains is that they are willing to commit acts of aggression against peaceful people in the event to strive for what it is that they want. Right? Michael B. Jordan's character was absolutely willing to do that. Nonetheless, him being smart, him being a historian, does not make him not a villain. You know what I'm saying? Most villains have done that. You know, that's how they operate. You know, oh, I want the same thing. I want liberation, right? Of these people, yeah, and then other people. Don't want to kill people just for the sake of doing that. You know what I mean? So villains, that's not anything unique to a villain. But when you don't understand a villain, you try to reason with that, right? Oh, is he really the bad guy? Yes, he's the fucking bad guy. They commit very bad things in order to achieve what it is that they want. Just because they think they're justified does not mean that they aren't villains. Almost every villain, big villain, thinks they're justified in what it is that they're doing. And often thinks that the hero has a bad way of going about his or her heroism. This isn't anything new. This isn't anything thought-provoking. This isn't anything like, you're not splitting the atom here, bro. Like this, the fuck? But when you don't know how villains operate, and you don't understand the culture of American comic books, you come out saying things like, well, Michael B. Jordan, that was an incredibly stupid thing. And I was going to break that down, but I especially take issue when, here we go, the old tired Malcolm and Martin Luther King Jr. wanted the same thing. No, they didn't. And anybody that actually followed those guys and read anything regarding those guys, and actually I ain't even talking about analyzing of what it is, someone else analyzing what it is that they said and what it is that they were. You can listen to their own words. Malcolm would talk a lot about the Martin Luther King Jr. types, and he didn't have much positive things to say about them. When he talked about the Negro leaders and all of this shit, they were ideologically different, fundamentally. And you know that if you just read a book. You just watched a clip from our podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.